Here is something that surprises people when they see how I actually use AI. The most useful AI I run is not a chat window I sit and type into. It is a pile of boring scheduled jobs that quietly work while I sleep. There is no dashboard, no glowing interface, nothing that would ever make a thumbnail. It is just a list of tasks that fire on a timer, in the dark, with nobody watching. And honestly, that is the part that changed how much I get done. The chat window is where AI feels impressive. The scheduled jobs are where AI actually earns its keep. So in this video, I want to show you the unglamorous backbone of my whole operation, what these jobs really are, what pairing them with AI unlocks, the real ones I run every single night, and the part almost nobody talks about, which is what happens when one of them silently breaks. No hype, just the plumbing. First, what a scheduled job actually is. Let me define this in plain words, because the jargon scares people off for no reason. A scheduled job is just a task that runs on a timer, with no human present. That is the entire idea. You tell the computer run this exact thing every night at 3 in the morning, or every 15 minutes, or every Monday, and then it does, forever, whether you remember it or not. On the machine under my desk, the tool that does this is called Cron, and it has been around for decades. It is not clever, it does not think. It is a dumb, reliable alarm clock for your computer. It wakes up, checks if anything is due, runs whatever you told it to run, and goes back to sleep. That is genuinely all it does, and that boring reliability is exactly the point. It never gets tired, it never forgets, and it never decides it would rather do something else tonight. What most people use it for. Now, for decades, what people pointed these timers at was very simple stuff. Move a file from here to there. Delete old logs so the disk does not fill up. Copy a folder to a backup drive. Restart something that tends to crash. All useful, all completely mechanical. The job could only ever do exactly what you spelled out, step by literal step, with zero judgment of its own. If the situation was even slightly different from what you predicted, the job either did the wrong thing or fell over. So for years, a scheduled job was basically a very punctual but very stupid assistant. It would do the dishes at the same time every night, but it could not tell a clean plate from a dirty one. You had to describe every single move in advance, and it could not handle a single surprise. What pairing it with AI unlocks? Here is where it gets interesting. And this is the whole reason I am making this video. When you put an AI model inside one of these scheduled jobs, the job suddenly stops being stupid. It can now read, summarize, decide, and write, not just move files around. That is a genuinely different category of thing. The old job could copy 100 files. The new job can open those files, understand what is inside them, and tell you the 3 that actually matter. The old job could save a log. The new job can read the log, notice that something looks wrong, and write you a plain sentence explaining what it thinks happened. The timer still provides the punctuality, the showing up on the dot every night, no excuses. The AI provides the judgment, the part that used to require a human sitting there reading. You are bolting a brain onto an alarm clock. And once you have done that even once, you start seeing jobs everywhere that used to need you and now do not. The renders that run while I sleep. Let me make this concrete with the jobs I actually run, because vague is useless here. The first one is rendering. I make a lot of video, and rendering is slow and hungry, so I do not sit and watch it. Through the day, I just queue up the work. Then overnight, a scheduled job picks each item off the queue, one at a time, and renders it on my graphics card while I am asleep. One at a time matters because 2 renders fighting over the same card at once will corrupt each other, so the job is deliberately patient. I wake up, and the videos that did not exist last night are sitting there finished. I did not lose an evening staring at a progress bar. The machine did the grinding in the hours I was not using it anyway, which is exactly when a computer should be working hardest. The backups I never think about. The second job is backups, and this is the most boring and the most important one I own. Every night, a job quietly copies the work that matters off this machine and a handful of my servers, encrypts it, and pushes it to storage somewhere else entirely. I do not push a button. I do not remember to do it. It just happens in the dark every single night, whether I thought about my data that day or not. The whole value of a backup is that it already ran before you needed it. A backup you have to remember to make is a backup you will not have on the one day a drive dies. So I took myself out of the loop completely, and that is the single best automation decision I have ever made. The day something does break, the copy from last night is already sitting safe. The health checks watching my systems. The third set of jobs is health checks, and this is where the AI part really starts to shine. I run a few machines and a few services that paying people actually depend on, so I have small jobs that wake up every few minutes and look at them. Is this server responding? Is that disk filling up? Is this service still doing the thing it is supposed to do? On its own, that is just classic mechanical monitoring. But I have wired a model into the noisy ones, so instead of dumping a wall of raw numbers at me, the job reads the numbers, decides whether this is normal weather or something genuinely wrong, and only bothers me when it is the second thing. That filtering is the whole point. A monitor that cries wolf every hour is a monitor you learn to ignore, and an ignored alert is worse than no alert at all. The morning summary that reads everything for me. The fourth one is my favorite, and it is the clearest example of the brain on the alarm clock. Early every morning, before I am even awake, a job goes around and gathers everything that happened overnight. Which renders finished, whether the backup ran clean, anything the health checks flagged, a few numbers from the things I track. Then it hands all of that to an AI model and asks for a short, plain summary, the kind of thing a sharp assistant would leave on your desk. And by the time I sit down with coffee, there is one calm paragraph waiting that tells me what I need to know and nothing I do not. I am not logging into 5 different places to piece the night together. The job already read all of it for me and wrote it up. That is hours a week I simply do not spend anymore, and I get a clearer picture than I ever did by hand. The content jobs that keep the lights on. The fifth set is content work, the steady stream of small writing and processing tasks that keep my projects moving. Drafts get tightened, things get tagged and sorted, routine pieces get prepared, so a human only has to glance and approve instead of starting from a blank page. I want to be careful and honest here, because this is exactly where people oversell. These jobs do not replace the judgment, and they do not replace me. A person still reads and approves the things that matter. What the jobs remove is the dead, repetitive part, the staring at an empty document at the start. They do the boring first 90% so the human can spend their attention on the 10% that actually needs a human. That is the honest shape of it, and it is plenty. Why Cron plus AI beats either one alone. So step back and look at why this combination works. Because it is not obvious until you have lived with it. AI on its own, the chat window, is brilliant, but it only ever does anything when you show up and ask. It has judgment but no punctuality. It will never wake up at 3 in the morning on its own. Cron on its own is the opposite. It is perfectly punctual but completely brainless. It shows up on the dot and then can only do exactly what you spelled out. No thinking aloud. On their own, each one has a gaping hole. Put them together and the holes close. You get the timing from the timer and the judgment from the model, the showing up from one and the figuring out from the other. That is the whole trick, and it is almost embarrassingly simple once you see it. Neither half is impressive alone. Together they quietly run a business. The part nobody shows you when a job breaks. Now here is the part that almost every video about this conveniently skips, and it is the part that actually matters. These jobs run when you are not watching. That is the entire appeal, and it is also the trap. Because a job that runs while you sleep can also fail while you sleep, silently, and just stop. And a silent broken job is genuinely worse than no job at all. With no job, you at least know you have to do the thing yourself. With a silently broken one, you believe it is handled, you stop checking, and you find out it has been dead for 2 weeks on the exact day you finally needed what it was supposed to produce. That is how people lose data they thought was backed up the whole time. So the single most important rule in all of this is that every job has to be able to shout. If the backup does not run, I get a message. If a render fails, I get a message. If a health check trips, I hear about it. The rule I hold to is simple. No news is not good news. No news is suspicious. A healthy job tells me it succeeded, not just that it failed. Because absolute silence might mean everything is fine. Or it might mean the whole thing quietly died and is no longer even capable of complaining. You do not just automate the work. You automate finding out when the work did not happen. How to start? With exactly one job. So if you want to try this, here's the honest advice, and it is the opposite of ambitious. Do not try to automate your whole life this weekend. Pick one small, annoying, repetitive task that you already do by hand. Something low stakes where it does not matter much if it breaks the first few times. A tiny daily backup of one folder is a perfect first job. Get that one thing running on a timer, all by itself. and then leave it alone for a week and just watch whether it actually fires. Resist adding a second one until the first has earned your trust. Then, only then, add the alert so it can tell you when it fails. And only after that should you let an AI model anywhere near it to read or summarize or decide. Layer it slowly. One reliable, boring job beats 10 clever ones that you do not actually trust and quietly check by hand anyway, which defeats the entire point. The goal was never a clever system. The goal was to stop being the thing that has to remember, so that is the real backbone, the unglamorous one. The AI that genuinely changed my operation was never the impressive chat window. It was a pile of dull, punctual little jobs, each one now just smart enough to read and decide, all of them shouting the moment anything goes wrong, quietly doing real work in the hours I am asleep. It is not exciting to look at, it is just deeply, boringly reliable, and reliable is what actually compounds. If you want more honest, hands-on breakdowns exactly like this one, the real plumbing and none of the hype, subscribe and follow along. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.